All right, it is a beautiful fall day, nice cold morning, and emphasis on morning because I could not tell these stories at night. So today we are talking about Black horror, to be specific, African American horror. And I was inspired by this video, by my grandma, who's my great grandfather would tell stories. She said ghost stories with his friends because they live in the country, and this is, pre-television era, and I don't even think they had a radio at that time. But also, I was inspired by one of my favorite horror movies, and that is Tales from the Hood. Y'all gotta watch it. I mean, if you haven't seen it, I'm sure some of y'all have because it's pretty old movie, but it's so good. I absolutely love it. And it has elements. It's interesting. I'm gonna go on a little, not rant, but I'm gonna go on a little tangent here. But it has like elements of, traditional African American folk tales and scary stories, and it's perfect. So anyways, make sure my mic is doing what it needs to do. So anyways, like I said, we're going to talk about African American, aka Black, quote unquote, horror today. So the first story is going to be Wait Till Emmett Comes, but I want to give you a little bit of an history of these stories, where they come from. So normally these stories mix comedy with horror, and if you know anything about African American humor, sometimes it can be a little dark. I guess is how we deal with our trauma. There are variations and changes to certain names and stories because it depends on where the story, like who's telling it. So what region is telling it, or where it comes from. For example, the first story we're going to talk about, Wait Till Emmett Comes, there are variations on the name of the main character. So it could be Patience was one, or Waylon Balaam. So like I said, it depends on the storyteller. Now this story, Wait Till Emmett Comes, hails from Virginia, but there are multiple versions of it. I actually first encountered it in a book that I'm going to put up on the screen for you all, that I went on Amazon and rebought because I gave it to my cousin and she freaked out and was like, get this shit away from me. So anyways, this is the oldest published story, Wait Till Emmett Comes, and it goes back to 1926. That's when it was published. So the main character is a Bible packing preacher, and he takes refuge in a haunted house during a storm. And you'll find a lot of the stories have like an old, dark, or big house that, people need to take refuge in from inclement weather, or, otherwise, or they're just tired. But he lights a fire and settles in for the night. And as he is relaxing and he's actually reading his Bible, a large black cat appears and leaps onto the coals in the fire, because he had lit a fire, to keep himself warm. And this cat says,
Wait till Emmett comes.
And the preacher is shocked by the cat because he's like, cats don't talk. Wait a minute, what's going on? So he's like, maybe I'm tired. So he goes back to what he's doing, which is reading. And seconds later, another cat comes, and it's a black cat as well. And this cat asks the other cat,
what shall we do?
And the first cat replies,
Wait till Emmett comes.
So now a third cat has joined the feline party. And this cat is described in the story is as big as a tiger. And this one asks,
what shall we do with him?
So this cat says,
"We should not do anything until Emmett comes."
By then, the preacher is freaked all the way out. And when I first encountered the story, I too was like, who the flip is Emmett and why are we waiting on him? Not even like the fact that the cats were talking and whatnot. Like, I was just like, what's going on? So, the preacher does not stick around for Emmett. And he leaves. And that's the scary part about the story. We don't know who Emmett was. We have no idea who this Emmett customer, as Matt Berry says in Garth Marenghi's Dark Place. We don't know who Emmett is, and that's what makes this story so creepy. And I mean, if you're into, like, in addition to watching scary stuff and you want to read something scary, this is one of those to read. It's very atmospheric. So the next story is Big Liz, and this comes from the Eastern Shore of Maryland. And I actually asked one of my former coworkers who lives in Baltimore about Big Liz, and she said she had never heard of it. But it is from Maryland. So this is the story of a slave woman, and this story has been around since the Civil War, so you can see, you know, it's been around for some time. So she's actually considered to be a spirit, a ghost, and she resides in a swamp by the name of the Greenbrier Swamp, and it's actually 10 square miles and located near the Blackwater Wildlife Refuge there in Maryland. And legend has it that Big Liz was a slave woman, like I said, on the plantation. And it's been said that her master, owner, whoever, was probably a smuggler or a spy for the Confederate Army. So it's been said that Big Liz was a spy as well for the Union Army. And, excuse me, and her master was keeping Confederate money that was later found because, you know, Big Liz told the Union officials, I guess you could say, where this money was. So Big Liz is considered to be a traitor by her master, and the master needs to get rid of Big Liz and the money as well. So he asked her, and I'm doing like severe air quotes right now, to help him bury the money. So they go out into the swamp and they find a sapling tree, and he points to that tree and he's like, hey, we're going to bury the money here. So when Big Liz bends down at the burying spot, the master decapitated her and left the body there to rot, decompose, do his nasty thing. So since her murder, people have seen strange lights, and others see Big Liz herself. She is holding her head and coming out of the swamp. She's said to beckon people forward towards her master's money, but those who follow Big Liz don't return. And I guess you could say the cool thing about this is, like, there's a actual apparition attached to this story. So the DeCourcy Bridge, which crosses the Transpoquing River near Greenbrier Swamp, is where Big Liz is often seen. But there's a process, like many of these stories suggest, that you have to go through in order to see Big Liz. So you must drive your car up the bridge at midnight, honk your horn 3 times, flash the headlights 2 times, then turn off the car. And Big Liz will emerge from the swamp with glowing or with red eyes. But yeah, and that is actually from Chesapeake Ghosts, which is a book I suggest you get. There's a whole series of these books about different regions and states. I think I have one about Georgia, and I think I have one about Florida. But you can find that on Amazon. They have a plethora of stories to read if you want to, like, you know, get creeped out in a literary way. And you don't want to read just Edgar Allan Poe or Stephen King. You want, like, some legends. Chesapeake Ghosts is a good source for that. So, The next story is Hold'em Tab. So this is another African American folktale, and it involves a big house, and this is another one that destroyed my life as a child. So a man finds an abandoned house on a cold day, and it's actually two men, really. So the men are told that the house is haunted by a passerby, and one man's like, you know what, I'm just gonna sleep out here in the snow. While the other man, Tab, says he isn't afraid of ghosts. So Tab's friend is like, okay, whatever, I'm just gonna go. And he sleeps out in the cold. And eventually, like in the story, he says, damn, maybe Tab really was the smart one. Because he kind of suggests that Tab isn't the brightest bulb in the pack. So eventually Tab's friend gets so cold, he's like, you know what, I'm just gonna go back to that house, see how Tab is doing. And so Tab's friend goes back down the road to check on Tab. And he finds his friend sleeping peacefully in his big warm bed. There's a fire roaring, and he's like, yeah, I was the dum-dum in this picture. So then the man sees something dark moving on the ceiling. And he's like, what the flip is that? And as his eyes adjust, he notices that the ghost that is on the ceiling, it's a ghost basically, and he is dressed all in white, and he's looking down on Tab, and it seems like he's about that action. So he's ready to wrestle with this, this guy laying in the bed, so Tab. So the man tries to warn Tab, and he's yelling through the window, hey Tab, like, wake up. And I think he actually breaks the window, and he's like, hey Tab, get up, there's a ghost about to, attack you. So Tab eventually listens, he wakes up, and this is just as the ghost falls on him. So Tab begins to wrestle with the ghost, and it's pretty much, I won't say reiterated, but because that's not the right word. Tab is described as being a very strong man, so he can wrestle with this ghost. And he wrestles with the ghost. But all the while, his friend, Tab's friend, is yelling, Hold'em Tab. Hold'em Tab. Like they're in a street fight, really. And the ghost and Tab fight until they disappear into thin air. So we don't know what happened to Tab. It's presumed the ghost took him to the beyond. But that is Hold'em Tab. And when I was doing my research, they were saying that a lot of these stories, like many folklore stories, it is like an allegory, or it's trying to tell you something. And this one, listen, not trying to be quote unquote woke here, but this one, it sounds like a white man attacking a black man while he's, comfortable and living his life. But, that's what I could see out of this. But other than that, it's really just a really freaking scary story. Because you don't know what happens to Tab. You just, that's the thing about these stories, is it leaves you like, what? Like this. So we don't know what happened to that person. There's another story that I have. Let me see if I can find it on my bookshelf. That it's part of those stories. Oh God, what is that book called? Oh, found it. The Headless Haunt. So actually, when I do post this, I'm going to put it up on the screen. Oh, so Hold'em Tab is described as a jack-o'-lantern tale. That's interesting. I'm trying to find... No, I cannot stress enough. This book is so good. I love it for all its scary stories. It's amazing. But there's one, I'm trying to find it, where this man's wife, God, there's so many. There's so many gems in here. I'm so excited. I'm probably going to read this. Okay, so I'm going to read this one because it's short, because I couldn't find the story I was going to tell you all about. And I'd originally added the jack-o'-lantern legends to this recording, but jack-o'-lanterns, the way I understand it is it's a cross-cultural thing. So jack-o'-lanterns came over with the Irish from Ireland, and the jack-o'-lantern is, you've seen them. It's basically something usually on a stick with a candle in it, usually like a pumpkin or a squash, and it's to ward off spirits. And there's actually a story behind the jack-o'-lantern, and I'm going to do that on my TikTok since we're only talking about black horror here. So this story is called The End of Hawk, and this is from The Headless Hunt and Other African American Ghost Stories, and it was collected and retold by James Haskins. So Hawk and Old Man Lunan were walking along the road one night when they saw a light moving through the marsh. Hawk said, "I'm going to see what that is." Old Man Lunan told him to stay on the road because you don't know what's out there. Hawk said he wasn't scared and he was going to see what it was. Old Man Lunan said he wasn't going to have anything to do with it. So next thing Old Man Lunan knew, Hawk was falling down holes and scrambling in the briars and acting like he was possessed. Then Hawk disappeared altogether. So when Hawk didn't come home after a few hours, Old Man Lunan went and got a search party. They found Hawk later that night, and he was standing knee-deep in mud, his head reared back, and his hands sticking out in front of him. His eyes were wide open, and his mouth was twisted in terror. And he was stone cold dead, frightened to death by a jack-o'-lantern. So, that's the story. And actually, we have an origin on how Jack became a jack-o'-lantern. Let me see how long this one is. So this is the African American version of the jack-o'-lantern. Like I said, I'm going to do a TikTok on the Irish version so we can see both sides of the coin. So, how Jack became a jack-o'-lantern, as told by James Haskins. So Jack wanted power, and he knew how to get it. All he had to do was go to the crossroads at midnight and sell himself to the devil. One night, Jack went to the crossroads. When midnight came, so did the devil. "Devil," said Jack, "I hear you will give me all the power I want."
"Yes, Jack,"
said the devil.
"For 7 years you will have all the power you want, but after that time your soul will belong to me."
Jack figured he had 7 years to come up with a way to outsmart the devil. And so he said, "Devil, you got yourself a deal." For the next 7 years, Jack had all the power he wanted. As the end of the time approached, he started thinking about how to keep the power and keep his soul too. When the devil came to claim Jack's soul, Jack was ready for him.
"Jack, I'll come for your soul."
"Okay," said Jack, "but first, will you get that piece of shoe sole from above the door for me?" The devil didn't see why Jack couldn't get it himself, but he was willing to grant his last wish of Jack's. The devil reached for the piece of shoe sole, and just then Jack sprang into action. He took a hammer and nailed the devil's hand to the door. Poor old Satan hung by his hand nailed to the door, and it was very painful.
"Let me go."
"Only if you promise not to take my soul," said Jack.
"Okay, keep your soul, just let me go."
The devil did not bother Jack again for the rest of his life. So when Jack died, he went up to heaven, but he was not allowed in. He went down to hell, but the devil was waiting for him. The devil threw a chunk of fire at him and told him he was too smart for hell. Jack picked up the chunk of fire to light his way and wandered off. He wandered still in the swamps and forests, angry that he could find no resting place and determined to lure unsuspecting people into trouble. And this is the African American telling of the Jack-o'-lantern story. And it is very close to the Irish origin story. Like I said, this is just, the cultures cross, which I love. I'm now going to tell you about a family story. So my family is always full of surprises. And there is one story, well, there actually are many, but there's one story that really is pretty terrifying. And this involves a man that I believe he's my cousin, worked with. So my cousin, my mom's cousin, we'll say, it'll make it easier, used to work for the DeKalb County Parks and Recreation, pretty much. He was like a maintenance man. And he used to go to different parks, basically clean up and, do the thing. Well, he had this coworker who wasn't the savory type. Put it that way, because I don't know many details, but I'm going to give you what I know about this horrible man. So they would often frequent this park called Emmy Smith Park, which is not far from where we're sitting now. I'm sorry, I made that sound like a complete ghost story. It's not far from where we're sitting now. But he would go to this park with his coworker because that was on their route as far as cleaning up their recreational areas. And they would go over there, and he said that suddenly, this man always wanted to go over there to, he said, check on things, is what he said. So, my family member didn't think nothing of it because, let me hold this wig up. He didn't think nothing of it because he just thought, well, okay, cool. And he said he thought it was kind of strange sometimes because, it wasn't even like on their schedule all the time. Because I guess nobody really frequented that park. And where he would go was back up into the woods. And he would tell his coworker, I wouldn't even call him a friend, to wait in the truck while he went to check on something. So this is my cousin's story. So on the other hand, their other coworker would go with him to this girl's house. And this is previous to him checking on something at the park. And adultery's not cool, but he didn't think anything of it because he just knew like he was going to this woman's apartment to sleep with her pretty much. And I guess the guy was like, well, it's not murder or anything crazy, so he would just sit there and wait and be like, wow, you're a POS, you're not right. And this, speaking of not right, this hair is not right. So they don't think anything of it, because sometimes they would actually both go with him to this park, Emmy Smith Park, and eventually it comes out that this woman has disappeared. And my cousin, this guy, the other guy, not the one that is the, ass in this story, well, to say the least, they're like, oh shit, like, wait a minute, what? And things happen, and the authorities end up going over to Emmy Smith Park, and it is found that this woman's body was over in the park, and this guy had been checking on the body. Of course, the guy gets caught, goes to trial, and he ends up, or rather, my cousin and his other co-worker end up, testifying against this man, because they're like, yo. And they'd actually been investigated by the police, or, interrogated, rather, by the police, and they were like, listen, he's just a co-worker. I just thought, he was going to check on the park itself. We ain't had nothing to do with this. So, trial comes around, and they testify against him, And at the end of the trial, he tells them, I'm going to get you off what you did to me. Like he didn't do this himself. Like he didn't, let me get my water real quick. Like he didn't, he didn't murder this woman like they did it. I've actually tried to look up the full story. I don't even know if this man is still living. That said he was going to get them. And they were just like looking at him like, yo, you did this to yourself. Like, we had nothing to do with your tomfoolery. And that does creep me out though, because like, we drive by that park because my aunt actually lives over in that area. And every time, or the few times we've gone over there, they'll be like, remember when so-and-so worked with that murderer? And I'm just like, what? Like, the first time I heard it, I was like, excuse me? Like, what did you say? I'm sorry, I'm working on the back of the wig, so you can't really see it. But the first time I heard that story, I was like, what the hell? We hanging out with murderers now? Is this what we do? But when he said that man said he was going to get them, I was like, oh no. That would scare me. I mean, even if the person was, in jail for life, it's still uncomfortable to hear somebody say that in such a fashion and in such a place. Like, I'm going to get you. And you're like, huh? That's more true crime than Halloween. The fact that it's a family story disturbs me so, but yeah. So, I am going to hopefully be done with this video. allowed us to go to the library, we went there looking for how to kill a werewolf. And we found it in the encyclopedia and also the dictionary, because back then, they didn't have like Britannica online and stuff like that. So we used physical encyclopedias. So we found that we needed silver to kill this werewolf. So after ASP was done for the day, and armed with this knowledge, I resolved, because I was always like, I got it, to get some silver. And we actually all had decided, yeah, we're going to get the silver, we're going to give it to his brother just in case things pop off. So once I was at home, I went to my older brother's room because I knew he had money. And I can still smell the CK1. Like, it had this cologne that was just like, oh God, it would make your eyes water. It would burn the nose hairs out of your nose. It was very loud in there. And he was sitting on his bed doing something, probably homework. And I got to his coin stash. And I started grabbing nickels and dimes, like just like getting nickels and dimes. And he's like, what? Like, I can imagine his teenage brain. He's like, what the are you doing? And I'm like, I need silver. Now I know, y'all, dimes and nickels, not silver, but I was a child and I did not know any better. So he snaps at me, and my parents hear him going off, us going back and forth, and they come to his room. And I start telling them about how I need silver because, so and so saw a werewolf, and they're like, put the coins back. And I'm like, no, like, for real, I need this. They tell me to get out of my brother's room, and I leave dejected at the idea that a werewolf was going to more than likely terrorize Austell, which is the town we lived in, because nobody got the nickels, or the silver, rather, they needed. All right, and me and my friends came up in a time when the Blair Witch came out, Harry Potter had just come out as a novel, and The Craft had just come out, and we were just like, we're going to be witches. And actually, the Blair Witch didn't influence us. It was more so Harry Potter and The Craft, which is really dark if you think about it. So anyways, me and my friends tried to start a covenant. I was 8, maybe 9, and my mom, who I guess just didn't want me to be weird, said no because witches worship the devil, which we all know is BS. And even she knew it was BS. She just said it, I think, just because maybe she was just thinking kids are afraid of the devil, right? But my mom did relent, and I mean, she really isn't that religious, so I always thought that was kind of hilarious. So I'm like, I mean, we go to church, but do we really go to church? So anyways, she let us be witches. And boy, could we be a sight. We would stuff our pockets full of salt packets from the cafeteria. I think we tried to call the Four Corners during recess. You know, the Four Corners is, is it the Elements? I can't remember. Especially when we were on this huge field in the back of the school. So the back of Bryant Elementary was situated like this. So, you have, like, you could see the cafeteria windows, and then where all the school buses parked. And then beyond that, you go down the stairs, and that was the field where they had field day and, all that sort of thing. And it was basically like one of those fields that they really don't cut the grass in. It's just a field. And during recess particularly, or after school program recess, if we were in after school program together, we would try to call the Four Corners. I actually told my friend this who practiced Wiccan, and he was like, wow. He was blown away. We were always trying to cast spells. For example, we casted a spell to win field day, but we rarely did it for tests. And I thought that was weird because I'm like, I'm horrible in math. Why didn't I think to cast a spell so I could, Get my math going. Get my math brain working. I don't know what that was about. I mean, we would cast spells for anything if it's so, like, allotted. Like, if we, this is kind of dark, but there was, I don't know that there was a teacher we didn't like, but, you know, sometimes teachers get into your nerves and you'd be like, let's put a spell on her to make her do something stupid. But it was always, like, something lame, because we didn't want to kill nobody. We just, like, you know, make her trip and fall or something crazy. Luckily, nobody went full Nancy. And if you know that reference, we can be friends. Eventually, our little covenant fell apart because I moved away, and my other friend moved away, and it just, you know, just fell apart after 4th grade. And now we go to the Concord Bridge. Or Concord. I think we say Concord. I know they say Concord up north, but there's this bridge that still puts the fear of God in me, and that is the Concord Bridge. It crosses, I'm going to say this clearly because it actually, that's a different story, Nickajack Creek. And at night, we will go through there. So we will go to this bridge, always at night, rarely during the daytime. Even, you know, but even the daytime, that place was creepy. So it just always gave me, it gives like Tim Burton movie vibes. And one time, some jackasses, and I'm gonna call them jackasses, hung something on the inside of the bridge, and that took me clean out. Like, it was like these little ghosts or something, like little, I don't know, but they were shaking, because that's the other creepy part about this bridge, is because it's so old. It was built in the 1800s. When you go over the bridge, you kind of bump a little, because, you know, it's structurally sound. It's just the way they built the road is kind of hard for a car to go through there smoothly. And, you know, like I said, this place always creeped me out. And guess what? There's ghostly legends related to it. So it's said that during the 1800s, several kids died near the landmark in the creek. So they, you know, kids swimming in the creek and they would drown. At one point, the 3-year-old son of a local miller from nearby was playing near the mill, and the father of the boy found the boy later on stripped of clothing, bleeding, gashed, and lifeless, wedged in the machinery of the mill. So maybe that was just my little brain being pre-sensitive, because now I am that person. Like, I don't like to tell people, like, crazy, but no, like, I think I might be asensitive to a degree, not like full, you know, psychic or whatever. Next story. This one right here is called The Closet Door / Crazy Dream, or did I really see some shit? So, once again, this takes place in Austell, Georgia, where I grew up. And I mentioned earlier my older brother Jason, and he would oftentimes try to or he would scare me, either by hiding under my bed and making growling sounds, grabbing my leg as I was getting into bed, or just putting on MJ's Thriller and putting it on repeat. That's a traumatizing ass video. Like, even when I watch it today, I still have like a tiny bit, I guess it's my inner child that's just like, turn it off now. So this night, I was laying in bed trying to go to sleep, and this is when I slept with the TV off. So I'm laying in bed and I would have the radio on, and I was also brainstorming. And this is something I actually still do, like, to get story ideas. Once my brain is calm, that's just my way of, you know, sort of relaxing and going to sleep. And I used to tell myself stories to go to sleep. And I also had, so y'all, you know, I don't know if anybody else did this, but I had my Power Rangers and like Barbie dolls set up, like the few. I would always pick a few, like, you are the, you know, the few, the proud, the people who are gonna guard my bedroom, or my bed. I would have them like sort of I put in standing sentinel, but really they would be like sitting on the opposite pillow. Or when my parents put in twin beds in the room, they would sit on the opposite bed, just kind of like, it was weird, like kind of like scanning the room. And I actually saw that in an episode of American Dad, and I was like, oh, this takes me back. But anyways, also had a nightlight, because your girl did not play. And I'm going to tell you something, that nightlight was never bright enough for me. Because it was like that, almost what I call that soda lamp color or whatever, never bright enough for me. So while I'm laying there, I get this vibe. Like someone's watching me. And I'm like, immediately, I'm just like, fuck off, Jason. Leave me alone. My brother's name is Jason, not the serial killer. And I'm just like, get out. Leave me alone. I'm not doing this with you today. But there was no sound. And see, here's what I didn't put in my notes. That night, Jason was not there. So he's my half brother. So he was our sibling, whatever. We don't have the same mom. So he was at his mother's house that weekend. When that hit me, I was like, okay. So I look at my Red Ranger action figure, and I'm looking at him like he's gonna say something. He's an inanimate object, like he's gonna say something. And I'm like, what the fuck is going on? And as I zero in on I turned away and zero in on my closet door, this door opens. It opens. And it's not a regular, door on hinges. It's one of those like folding closet doors. And I immediately start screaming. I mean, I'm hollering. I'm screaming. I'm like both paralyzed with fear, and I'm screaming. My parents rush into the bedroom, and they try to calm me down. And I'm like, absolutely not. Get me out of this devil house. And when I tell them what's going on, they try to debunk it. Like, I remember my mom went over there, and she's like, oh, girl, it's just your old comforter. And I'm like, how? It's when she goes in there, and my mom is a great poker face. The comforter is like neatly folded, and it's sitting on top of, I think it was like a tub with my toys in it. There's no way that thing could have fallen, because the tub had a top on it, and it, couldn't do it. I ended up sleeping with them in their bed. And apparently I was pretty bold, because I think the next night I went there and I was like looking at whatever's in that closet, like, listen, this is my room. You can go to hell. This is my domain. Like, I'm basically an only child most of the like year, so you can't do me. And then like this next incident, this next story is related to what happened that night. So once again, in my childhood home in Austell, I'm laying in bed one night in my parents' room at this point. And I remember it was like the fullest of moons. It was like one, I guess they call it a super moon. And I got up to use the bathroom, and something told me to look out the window. So they had 2 windows in their room. And I went to the one closest to the bathroom. I was going to the bathroom. And in the full moonlight, I could see these men in like old-timey clothes. And they're chopping wood. And they were freaking see-through. Surprisingly, I did not pee myself. Like, I'm very proud of little old me for not peeing on myself, because I think I was in so much like, what the flippery is going, like, what's going on, that it's just like, it was almost like my ureters just went like, it just stopped. So I'm like, what did I see? And years later, I mean, I didn't tell my parents this story, but years later, I was just curious. I'm always curious about history and the history of the land and what it used to be and all that. And I asked my mom, why was our neighborhood called Sewell Ridge? And she tells me it had been a farm of some kind, and the people who owned the farm. They actually still lived in that area, near our neighborhood, but they sold a good portion of it to the developers to make it into a neighborhood. So basically, whatever I saw, it was a residual haunting or something of, maybe some men clearing the land or getting ready to put something there, or maybe chopping the wood to sell to, people in Atlanta or around the area. Because if you are from here, you know that Georgia for a while, and I think even still to this day, is well known for its Georgia pine, and it's the wood we have here, because it can be used for paper. So if you see Georgia Pacific and all that, or they build houses and stuff out of use the wood to build houses and things like that. But yeah, that memory will come up in my brain every so often. Like, remember when you saw that shit? So that is the end of my little spooky childhood memories. Yeah, enjoy. I hope you enjoy this. Enjoy my fear. Laugh at my pain, as Kevin Hart would say. Bye. All right, I am back, and we are talking about the case of murder that occurred in one of the most beautiful homes in Savannah, Georgia. So, today we are talking about the book Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil. And this book is about the murder of Danny Hansford at the hands of his alleged lover and employer, Jim Williams. So, we're just going to make a long story short. So, Jim Williams was a antiques dealer living in Savannah, and he lived in this beautiful home called Mercer House. Mercer House was actually named by, just a side note, it's the family home of the singer Johnny Mercer, who sings the song Moon River, which is about the Savannah River. Side note, all this time I thought it was about the Mississippi. It's about the Savannah. But anyways, so he lives in Mercer House, and he has this handyman come in and do work for him. So at some point, Jim Williams shoots Danny Hansford, allegedly. We'll say allegedly, although I think they did prove that he did it. But he ends up shooting and killing this man, and Danny Hansford will die in Jim Williams' study, and that will come back in a few minutes. So, the thing about Jim Williams is he was essentially a socialite. Like he was in the upper crust, the uppest of crusts in Savannah. Like he was on top of the game. He had like an annual Christmas party that people would, be really hurt and offended if they did not invite them. Like he was up there. He was also kind of funny. They filmed a movie and something happened that he had all sorts of antiques in this house. So, anyways, once he kills Danny Hansford, of course he's arrested and he's put in jail, and until the trial starts. Immediately he goes down from, like, it's a fall from grace. Like he is not well respected after that by the upper crust of Savannah, and he ends up going on trial. And that's, by the way, that's what that book is about. But anyways, so like I said, Jim Williams goes on trial, and he is found, I think he's actually found not guilty of murder, and he goes back to his house, and after the trial, like I think it's some months later, he ends up dying of a heart attack. And he is found in the same place that Danny Hansford's body was found. And it's been said that that was karma from beyond the grave, payback.